give it up for our next keynote speaker.
Hi everyone, so my name's Shey and I'm a designer primarily, and I'm also co-founder of The Loops, which is my new venture, and I'm super passionate to be able to come and talk to you today about it. It's something I'm actually leaving BP, where I currently work, next week to pursue, and leaving at the back, I know they're there, the lovely BP designers who have come to see me today. So like I said, I'm here to talk about a topic that I really deeply care about. And what I want to do is set a bit of context, hopefully. Yay, it worked. So right now, we know that the world is full of conversation about AI. We've seen it in the speeches today, and our LinkedIns are full of it. This is just a few of the snapshots around the fact that AI is here and UX is dead. We see, if I could see another tombstone on a LinkedIn post, I think I might cry. So when you see this, it's something that I've been worrying about, concerned about, and I'm sure all you are as well. The fact that AI is taking our jobs, that we're all going to be out of work, that UX is over. The thing that I've spent the last 25 years dedicating my life to is no longer relevant. So about a year ago, when I started seeing all of this and we saw kind of the boom in this type of content, I did what I normally do. Instead of kind of panicking and worrying, I started to face into the problem and try and understand more about what's going on, what that would mean for me as a designer, for my design teams, and for the design industry at large. And I think what's happened over the last year for me is I've actually come to the conclusion that AI isn't your problem. It's not your problem. It's not my problem. There's actually something bigger that we need to be thinking about and talking about. So what I'm here today to tell you is AI is not your problem. A better designer will be. And I'll tell you why. So at the moment, I'm hiring lots and lots of designers to scale the BP team in India. And the thing that I've started to understand is that AI is not the differentiator. It's something else. So let me tell you a bit of a story. As I said, I've been scaling teams for years and years, but of late, something different has been happening. And I'm going to tell you the story of 3 people who I've recently tried to hire. Now, full transparency, these are not real images. I've used AI and I have changed names to protect anonymity. Let's talk about our first designer who came to be interviewed. I was so excited to meet this person. Their portfolio was amazing. Their grids were on point. The motion graphics, I was like, this is the guy. Let's call him Bob. Bob comes into the room and I am ready to be wowed. What I soon discover is after the presentation, when I start asking questions, I start saying to him, why this choice over that choice? Why did you pick this element? Why this page hierarchy? He just looks at me blank, kind of like this. Doesn't know what I'm on about. I'm like, oh, but your portfolio is amazing. What else is going on here? So I change tack. I go, okay, let me give you a hypothetical scenario. We need to drive sign-ups for our loyalty program. How would you go about that? Tell me what you would do. I really wanted him to succeed. I thought his visuals were amazing, better than anything I would ever be able to produce. Again, kind of look like this. So I thought, okay, well, we don't all interview well. On to the next one. Next, we have, let's call this guy Sergeant. He comes into the interview. His portfolio was decent. It wasn't amazing. I wasn't excited like I'd been excited about meeting Bob, but I thought his portfolio was good. There was some good thinking, and I was wanting to see more from him. So he comes into the room and does his presentation, all good and well. I ask the same questions. So, why this page hierarchy? Why did you choose that element? And unlike Bob, he leant forward. He started to tell me the choices. He was able to describe why he'd made this design choice over that design choice. I thought, brilliant. Let me ask the next question. Let's put him on the spot. Let's say, how would you go about driving sign-ups to our loyalty program? He wasn't able to answer. He was great at describing the process he'd gone through after it happened. But when I said, think about a new problem, how would you approach it? What would be the first thing you test? He wasn't able to answer. Now let's come to our last candidate. Let's call this one Pallavi. I was really, really skeptical about this interview. When I looked at the portfolio, I was like, yeah, not sure. It didn't have the gloss of Bob. There wasn't motion graphics and all of that kind of stuff going on. I thought, but she seemed to have some good thinking when I read through the detail. There seemed to be something there. And I always like to have a bit of a wild card in the process just to make sure that I'm keeping up to date with things. She came in nervous, a bit nervous like I am now, nervous, kind of umming and ahhing a little bit. And her presentation was good enough. I asked her the question, why this element over that element? Why the page hierarchy? She lit up. She got super excited. She talked about the trade-offs. She talked about the technology constraints. She talked about the ROI, why the business had done that. She was able to talk about the fact that there would be things that she would do differently, that she would make different choices with different constraints. I asked her the question around, we have a problem with signups for our loyalty program. How would you go about it? I was blown away. She jumped up, she got a pen, she was on the whiteboard going, well, I do this, this and this. This is what I could know. This is what I might know. I was absolutely blown away. Needless to say, she's the one who got hired. And that made me realize throughout that hiring process that, throughout that hiring process, that there's something else going on. I have interviewed hundreds of designers. And the thing I'm noticing in the last year is that the AI is polishing work to a point of feeling super excited and I get that person into hire. However, when they are looking me in the eye across the table, and I've flown around the world from Australia to Pune to interview them, and I ask them the questions about the choices they are making, they are unable to articulate it. Now, I get it. I've used AI today. I'm not saying AI is a bad thing. I'm not saying we shouldn't use it. I'm not saying we shouldn't consider it for design. But what I'm saying is, if you polish your CV or your portfolio to the point that you are unable to articulate your thinking, then I'm going to hire the person who can out-think you rather than the person who can out-polish you. And that's something that I've been considering a lot recently. I'm not the only one who's starting to notice that actually the differentiator around employment is less about skill on the tools, whether that's Sketch or Figma or AI, and more about capabilities. So this is from the World Economic Forum, Future of Job Report. Obviously, as I'm a designer, I've simplified it for effect. But some of the core skills that you are going to need in employment, whether that's design or any other industry, is adaptability, analytical thinking, and creative thinking. So based on my personal experience and what I'm seeing in the academic research, what I'm starting to see is it's not AI that's going to take the job. It's a better designer, someone who can outthink and outsmart you. They're the ones I'm going to hire. In a large corporate organisation that's complex with loads of personalities and loads of challenges, I don't want someone who can polish the UI. I want someone who can think their way through the problem to the other side. So this is also AI because I love hugging. Like, if anyone's seen my LinkedIn, they know I've got a picture of me hugging Johnny Ive. So we have Johnny Ive and Joe Gebbia, if I say his name correctly. And I think it was referred to earlier. What I was also seeing is the fact that as things get tough or complex problems need to be addressed, US government, Trump, not that I agree with him on anything apart from this, has hired Joe to come and cut through the noise and create amazing experiences. When OpenAI, an AI company, is thinking about the future of hardware and how people are going to interact with AI, they hire Johnny Ive. What I'm seeing is my personal experience, the academic research, and large organizations going, when times get tough, the people I want to hire are the thinkers, the people who can critically analyze and can creatively solve their way into the future. So they are hiring designers, which tells me I'm not worried about AI. I'm worried about someone who can think better than me. So this is what I came to the conclusion of over the last year. The future belongs to designers who can think better. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be good at using the tools or you shouldn't have your craft, but I would say within your craft is your creative and analytical thinking. That is something that you need to hone equally as your ability to use Figma to create great design. So how do you do that? This is AI generated. I thought it was quite good. Like, it does look like me. This brings me to another story. So my next story is about a pottery class. And bear with me, these things will come together eventually. I, over the last year, have been toying and thinking about this problem with AI. We're going through a massive transformation in BP. And what I really wanted to do was get back to being a beginner at something, take myself away from the screen, get tactile, get back to creativity. I was spending way too much time in PowerPoint and Excel. So I started a pottery class on a Friday. I went along to the first lesson and I was like, this is for me. I am great. Because when I turned up, the instructor guided me to the wheel. She was there the whole time. She was telling me more of this, less of that. And by the end, I had made my first pot. I was like, maybe I will quit digital and start to be a potter. I was like, this is it. 1 week, I'm a pottery genius. Week 2, I was hooked. Week 3, I was like, okay, I think I'm getting the hang of this. But something happened in week 4 where the instructor had been attentive and guiding me and telling me, not like that, sit up straight, do all of that. She was distracted. She was working with other people more. The feedback that I was getting and the guidance dropped off a cliff. And by the end of my pottery class, my once proud pottery career that was starting to emerge had completely collapsed. And my pot was about this big. I still took loads of photos and shared it with everyone. But it made me realize in that moment that you can be taught a skill once and you can think you've got it. You can do it the second week, think you've got it. But as soon as the expert is no longer there guiding you and giving you the feedback, it starts to collapse. I didn't get braver and go, I'm just going to go for it. I got more cautious. I started to kind of trim scope, trying to control the situation, not by doing more, but by doing less. So what that taught me was that pushing myself, trying to do it harder, without clarity, without feedback and guidance, it just locks the mistakes in faster. I did an amazing job of loads and loads of tiny pots, but I wasn't getting any better. So I went back to the office and I have these two things going on in my mind. So I'm like, we need people who are critical, analytical, creative thinkers to help solve these massive problems. Also, I know that without feedback, you don't grow. So I thought maybe there's something in this. So I started to look around the office. Everyone seemed happy. We were delivering at speed. Stuff was going out of the door. So I thought maybe I'm wrong. There's something else going on. But when I started to dig in, I started to realize we were shipping faster, but the designers, when I spoke to them, were learning slower. There was a lot of frustration in the organization. It was like, yeah, we're getting stuff out, but all I seem to do I spend all of my time doing, I'm not getting any better. If I was at another organisation, I might be getting better. So what I started to realise, we were shipping faster, but our designers were learning slower. When I was in the pottery class, I was able to see the collapse. But as soon as I was in an office environment, it was hidden until you really start to dig into it. So I suppose that they came to 3 big lessons for me over the last year. First one being, reviews are not critiques. And it's a really, really important perspective, because I've been doing reviews. I've been chatting, hey, that looks good, great, fab, not so good. But that's not a critique. That is not feedback that's going to help the design get better, or more importantly, help the designer get better. The next thing was, we have a lot of velocity theatre, in that success within the organisation I've worked in, and others, I'm not saying it was just that particular one, and others, was like, if we're shipping faster, we're doing great. Speed is the only measure. And then the third one was copy and paste confidence. So the other lesson I learned in digging into this and speaking to designers was that with the pressure of speed and the lack of feedback, people are just copy and pasting. They're just, oh, I'll do this. I've seen this on Behance. I'll do that. I've seen this on Dribble. I'll do that. And now I'm not saying at all that we shouldn't follow best practice, because good design standards, following UX laws is key, but you need to contextualize it. You need to remember that best practice should be applied to the user problem that you are solving, and that you need to think critically and creatively about that user problem. So when I looked at the data, because I always go back and say, is this just me? Because oftentimes it's just me. I have these weird ideas. I actually start to look at McKinsey, Gartner, Forrester, all of those to go, is this something that's just particular to me, or is it more widespread? And what I found was McKinsey has highlighted that 70% of all projects, digital transformation projects, fail to meet their financial targets that they predict. They overpredict, they deliver on time because they are focusing on speed, but they're not delivering against the financial targets, which tells me that what they're doing is prioritizing speed over solving the right problems. So the answer came to me. The answer is, feedback is fuel. Feedback critique is the fuel for designers to get better, to solve business problems that drive ROIs for companies. But that seemed too simple. And then I'm sure you're all like, yeah, feedback, whatever. Like, that's really simple. But actually, I think that it's really key when we talk about growth is that we give people the fuel to grow as individuals, because then they can make a real business impact. So this is me sad. This is again AI, less successful, but I don't tend to be sad, so I had to get AI to create a sad picture. And I went back to feedback, and I was like, is it as simple as that? And I reflected on the fact that over the years, I've been doing design 25 years, which dates me. I've received lots of great feedback and some terrible feedback. So when I reflect on that, I started to look, and one of the first bits of feedback that I ever got that was really hard to hear, and I'm not saying feedback needs to be great, it's hard to hear sometimes, was the fact that when I first started as a designer, my manager at the time told me, that's all great, but you're rushing to a solution. You're just trying to get it out the door. The client's picking up on that. They think you don't care. You're just worried about getting it done. And that really hurt. But I also knew that it came from a place where she really cared about my growth. She really cared about me wanting to do better. Oh God, sorry, that's really hard. Really wanting to do better, but it was hard to hear. And that made me realise that feedback needs to come from a place where the person or the person who's giving it deeply cares about your growth. Otherwise, and I've done it before, if it's rushed or it shows a lack of consideration, it can actually be really damaging to that designer. Another time, when I first started at BP, and I think half of the BP designers at the back will remember this, I say it all the time. When I first started, we weren't doing a piece of work. An external supplier was within the organisation. And I went up to that VP and I said, why isn't my team doing it? I've been here a couple of weeks. I want to know, why isn't this design team, this internal capability, doing that work. And he was really straight with me, and he's like one of my favorite people in the whole world now. And he was like, your team is great at doing the doing, but they don't bring the big thinking that an external supplier can. So until you have that, we're not going to use you. So again, I was given the feedback that what people are looking for is that creative, critical thinking over speed to delivery. That's when you get the great projects, is when you can demonstrate that. Both of those stories, like I said, illustrate the fact that it was hard to hear. It made me sad. But what it did was made me better. And that's one of the things I think sometimes we can shy away from, is the fact that feedback is hard to give. It's hard to give another person if something's not great. We all like to try and make other people happy. It's hard to receive. It's hard to hear that you haven't done the job that was expected, or that you've spent weeks and weeks and weeks crafting something and it hasn't landed. But that doesn't mean that we should shy away from giving feedback, because it makes us better. It makes designers better. And it's the thing that's going to be the differentiator between you and the next AI tool, is because you can think your way through the problem. So feedback. I was like, okay, so how do we go about this? The first thing I think I want to take away, you to take away today, is I'm going to give you 3 habits that I think all of you can do. And like I said, I've just started The Loops, which is a company looking at how we can implement feedback. And I will have a bit of a screen of that, my sales pitch for a minute. But 3 things I think that every designer can do right now, that they don't need any tool, that they don't need anything to do, is start to think sharper, not just faster. And by what I mean by that is, when you get given a project, it's very easy to jump into action bias. I'm terrible for it. I'm like, I want to get out the door. I want to get it done. This will be great. But what I want as particular, because I know we've got lots of junior designers here, is take a minute. It's fine to take some time to sit with the problem. And I'm not saying 6 months of research. I'm saying take half a day and sit with the problem and really think about, what is the problem I'm trying to solve? What are my constraints? What are the risks? So that when you're next in that room with a senior stakeholder, you're super clear about the problem that you're solving. And when you ask for feedback about the work, you're framing it within that, rather than, do you like this? What do you think of this? Do you like that drop down? You're actually framing it in the way that is the business strategy that you're trying to answer or solve. And everybody can do that. You don't need to be a senior person to do that. You can be a graduate. Just sit there in that problem and really understand what you're trying to do. It will build that kind of critical thinking muscle. The next habit is feedback is fuel. And by what I mean by that is, feedback is the fuel to make you a better designer. And it's really easy to be shy about it, to kind of not want to ask that, particularly if you think, oh no, it's going to be tough to hear. I don't want someone to tell me I've done a bad job. The way to really help somebody who's giving you feedback is frame it. Go, okay, here's my design. These are the options I considered. I didn't choose those. I chose these ones because of X, Y, and Z. Please, can you give me feedback, whether that's your design manager or a stakeholder, about how you think I've solved that problem? Like I said, it's about building your kind of critical thinking muscle, and make it easy for the person. Don't just go, what do you reckon? Give them a construct so that they can help you be a better designer. Habit 3 is learn relentlessly. And I don't mean by lots and lots of courses, but what I mean is, at the end of a project, do a retro on yourself, for yourself. You don't need to do it for anyone else. You don't need to share it, but sit there and think, take 20 minutes out, spend 10 minutes going, what did I do great? What did I not happy with? Really reflect on the work, and then spend 10 minutes thinking about, what would I do differently? How would I change this? If I had my time again, what questions would I have asked? You're doing it for yourself. You're giving yourself that kind of feedback, and you don't need anyone else. If you want to share and ask people, that's great, but you should be doing it for yourself, taking care of your career, because you're the one who's going to be competing in this market. And then make one commitment. You don't need to be like, I'm going to change everything. It's not like a New Year's resolution where beginning of every new year, I'm going to exercise more. I'm going to read a book a day. I'm going to learn another language. It doesn't need to be huge. It just be like, Next time, I'll make sure I ask that question in the first meeting. That's it. Simple. And through that, you will start to build that muscle that's going to make you different from AI, because you are asking the questions that AI isn't, and you're thinking critically in a way that AI isn't either. So, like I said, I always go back to the data and go, okay, am I the only one who thinks this? And looking at both at Gartner and Harvard, firstly, about 80% or 81% of people in the work environment think that feedback is key to their growth. Only 48% of them get any feedback that's actionable. So you go, okay, well, half of them are getting feedback. But if you think of, as you're a business owner, that's half of your employees are not getting feedback that they can action to make your business better, which is a huge business problem. Because if you have lots of people wanting feedback, wanting to get better, wanting to do a better job for you, and you're not giving that feedback, you're actually leaving money on the table, because you're not building that skill that's going to mean that they can take your business into the future. And then this was one that blew me away. This is from Harvard Business Review, that 80% of people would take feedback over a 20% pay rise. That blew me away. It was like people would want feedback, people invested in their growth, constant and regular feedback over more money. And it's not obviously just particular to designers, but it's really key that if you're a designer taking ownership of your career, money is one measure of success, but getting better and being able to be a better designer is a key measure that you need to be thinking about. So my little sales break for 1 second. So that's what led me to quit corporate life. So I am leaving in a week. Scary, from my lovely BP people. And I've started The Loops. So for us, this is a feedback platform. What I mean is it's a platform where you can load up work and you can get feedback on the design work, just like a design manager would. The reason we've gone with this approach is because one of the key problems I also want to solve, and I'm sure lots of you in this room have been thinking, is that's all great. Go and ask for feedback. Go and ask questions. But I'm in a time zone where my manager is not there. They're somewhat absent. They kind of give me a thumbs up every so often, but I'm not getting that feedback often. And I know that pain. I wake up with loads of requests from my team about things they want feedback on. And yet I've got a school run. I've got to get set up for the day. I've got all of that before I sit down and give them any feedback on their work. What's happened? They've logged off for the day. And so we lose time. So that's why The Loops came around, because underpinning it is AI. Because like I said, AI is not a bad thing, but AI is a tool we can use to not just tell us, move this 2 pixels to the left, but to tell us, have you considered this? How are you thinking critically? How are you thinking creatively about this? Because I want you all to be better designers, so that when you're in the room with a hiring manager, you're the person who's picked because you are the best thing. I want you to be the person that when AI comes in and the robots take over, if we're to listen to LinkedIn, that they're going to keep you over anyone else, because you're the person who is the best at helping solve the problems that's going to make a difference to the business. First future, sad person. This is where we have AI, everything's automated, production's done, but underneath it all, while we think we have this amazing velocity, the designers are not growing, they're not getting better, they're starting to actually de-skill because they've outsourced all of their thinking. In that future, you won't notice it initially because productivity's up, we're out, everything's coming out the door. But what will happen is when a competitor comes into the market, they will outthink you and outsmart you because you have outsourced everything to a machine. And that's why I want designers to start thinking about how can they be those people that make a business difference. So in our second future, it's a happy person. And that happy person, again, AI is there. It's helping. I want to outsource some of the mundane. I'm not saying don't do that. But in that future, what actually you're doing is starting to build a muscle of creative and critical thinking, and you start to be the difference maker within your business. And that's always been kind of the golden altar that we all want to be. Is like, we want a seat at the table. We want to be there. We want to be there making the decisions as designers. I would say the way to do that is not getting faster at AI tools, but working on yourself as much as learning the tools, working on yourself, thinking about how you can be creative and critical thinkers so that you are the person who gets the job, not a better designer who has worked on that. So my kind of end, as we're just over time, are hopefully more concise than other people. I want you to be the better designer. I want you to work on yourselves, because the better designer will be the one who gets hired or retained when we have all of this AI disruption, because you have built that muscle of thinking and creativity. So, like I said, AI won't take your job. A better designer will. So you should be the better designer. Thank you.